of the Fortinet. And the services that we provide include inventory. So we are one of the value-added distributors that would hold inventory for customers well-built. We provide financing. We give you flexible payment methods. We do sales support from initial quote to close. Any marketing support like events, webinars, and any technical services from demo to deployment. So if you need an extra hand, we provide hand to the demand. So that's about us. And before I hand it over to Emeka, let me brief you on his bio and what the webinar will cover. So Emeka is a systems engineer based out of Fortinet's headquarters. He serves as a technical resource for the inside sales, channel sales, and DMR teams while covering Fortinet's fabric and enhanced technology products. So with the growing popularity of the FortiCloud services, Fortinet has increased the supporting infrastructure to deliver an ever more scalable solution which can handle over 4.7 million daily file samples. Currently, Fortinet has over 200,000 devices under management globally. So in this webinar, Emeka will address the following topics: challenges with managing security and wireless infrastructure, FortiCloud drivers and proposition value, and FortiCloud security intelligence, analytics, and more. So without further ado, now I'm going to hand it over to Emeka to further explore the subject.
Hey, thank you very much, Avani. Can you make me presenter so I can share my screen?
Oh, all you have to do is hit
share screen. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just 1 second here. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. My name is Emeka, and I'll be doing a deep dive into FortiCloud. A few things we'll be covering here would be pretty much a quick teaser about our fabric, huge message in there. I'll go over FortiCloud. I'll go over the provisioning aspect of FortiCloud. I'll go over the management aspect as well. Talk about our advanced threat protection, also known as sandboxing, and discuss briefly how FortiCloud brings you that visibility and flexibility into looking at several assets that you have within your infrastructure. Now, a quick housekeeping: if you have any questions, feel free to include those questions in the chat window, and I'll be keeping an eye for those questions. And lastly, in the agenda, I'll be covering FortiCloud indicator of compromise. So, I mean, before I jump into, talking about FortiCloud, I mean, I feel it's what, mentioning, messaging surrounding the fabric. The fabric is pretty much an outgrowth of our solutions, our point solutions that pretty much shares threat intelligence amongst each other. So you're talking about protecting your infrastructure from the cloud, or be it from the edge of your network, to the end where you have endpoints or clients or anything in between. We have visibility into your infrastructure, and we can pretty much ingest information from other vendor devices that you have integrated within your environment. That is the the broad aspect of the fabric messaging, and an extension of that messaging is how it reaches out to our FortiCloud infrastructure. So in terms of what we bring to bear, from a fabric standpoint for FortiCloud, we provide you with visibility, which is a key attribute of our fabric messaging, right? The visibility you get, and of course with visibility comes coverage. So you're talking about visibility into your cloud infrastructure, applications you have within your infrastructure, talking about the network layer security, access layer security, and in simple terms, what I mean is if you have a firewall device, you have the ability to manage those devices. You have the latitude to apply security inspection to be it firewall devices, access points, from our cloud infrastructure, right? Ensuring that your security posture is pretty much intact. And this comes very handy, especially if you have so many security assets or networking assets, spread out, across, different organizations or spread out across, different parts of the world. You want to ensure that those resources converge. And not only do you have the ability to manage them, but you have this ability to ensure that your security posture is seamless, across those infrastructures that you have spread out um, within your assets. Now, one of the key drivers, of course, for the cloud, and of course, it's gaining huge traction. Like Avani mentioned, we have over 200,000 devices. We get in several file samples daily, for sandboxing. And this is, part of the emphasis of, and don't just take this from me, this is from IDC, where you have a lot of BYOD devices, a lot of people, bringing in so many devices into the organizations. You're talking about mobile devices, then you're talking about, several assets that you don't really know how they make their way into your network, but somehow they are there, right? So what do we, bring to bear, within your infrastructure? We're talking about you having visibility, into those devices, right? So when you have visibility into those devices, how do you, pretty much apply certain security to those devices that, our users bring into your network, right? Laptops, cell phones, unauthenticated users that make their way into your infrastructure. So we have our access points that give you the ability, cloud access points that gives you the ability to apply certain, network security controls, be it, at a layer 2 level, you can deploy them in transparent mode. You can deploy them in you can deploy them in NAT mode as a layer 3 device, where you can segment several VLANs and apply certain security policies to different VLANs. Or even if you want to tie this to, authentication schemas that you have within your environment, be it radius authentication, you can also, leverage cloud APs to apply security, to users who authenticate to your domain controller, or even users who don't authenticate to your domain controller. And as an extension, you can push out, application, policies to those devices. You can push out web filtering policies to those devices, even IPS policies to those devices. So we are trying to ensure that, across the field, from a wireless perspective, even from a networking perspective, even if you have physical FortiGate devices deployed in your network, we have visibility into those devices, and we can actually, push out policies and enforce, security policies across the, the field. So, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, uh, of course, applying security from the cloud comes with its challenges. Part of the challenge, of course, is the cost aspect, security aspect, the ability for you to, apply certain operations, in the sense that, the solution you have today, can it scale to what your environment might look like tomorrow, or even 5 years from now, right? FortiCloud addresses those questions, right? It doesn't matter. We can scale up to, 10,000 devices. We can scale up to, X amount of devices. With FortiCloud, you have the, ability, latitude to add, like I mentioned, multiple assets to the cloud, and you can snoop into those different assets, be it our FortiGates, be it our FortiAPs, or be it our smart APs. You can snoop into those different assets and apply security policies to those assets. Okay, what if you have customers who are utilizing model, where you can manage several FortiCloud accounts, and you can pretty much, create detailed reports, or, you can pretty much create summary reports that you can present to, customers, or choose to give them access to their own, FortiCloud account itself. So, the idea is to give you, that flexibility to apply, certain security measures at a very, reasonable cost, and you can manage those assets, with very little or no expertise, right? Very straightforward to deploy. Very little need for, understanding the platform. Really straightforward, and I mean, you guys will see this, during the course of my presentation. So, what is FortiCloud? I've said this over and over again, um, and I mean, I've gotten a lot of questions from people who, asked me, "Hey, does this mirror Amazon Web Services, or does this mirror, Azure?" Nah, this is not pretty much a version of, those cloud resources, but in a nutshell, what FortiCloud is a cloud infrastructure, and I use that word loosely, that allows you to primarily manage Fortinet, devices, specifically the FortiAPs, or Forti Wi-Fi, which is pretty much a Fortinet device with an access, chip, and the FortiGate products, right? So this provides a central repository, for you to provision those devices. And as well, if your business happens to grow or scale, if you add more Fortinet or FortiGates or FortiAPs, you still have that visibility into those assets. You can push out several, templates of several configs from the cloud to all these different assets that you have spread across, your infrastructure. You can put these different assets into different groups, in a logical schema. That way you have them properly organized, and you remove the need for you to be, at a local customer's site, to configure the FortiGate, or to be at a local customer's site, to troubleshoot what's going on in the environment, or at a local customer's site, to do some sort of like forensic analysis or some sort of like security analysis, and also provides you a single pane of glass management, right? Where you have visibility, right, into all these assets that you have existing, within your cloud account itself. So this slide right here just gives you a visual, of the story I've been describing. You think about, in the center right here, you have your FortiCloud account, whereby, you just go to FortiCloud.com, you set up a free account, right? And you have the ability to, if you have several Fortinet devices, scattered in different locations, right? You can actually point all these devices to your FortiCloud account. From your FortiCloud account, you can administer configs, you can import configs, you can do backups, you can do firmware upgrades, right? You can push out scripts, from the cloud to different devices that you have, spread across different locations, right? And this is all done via zero-touch provisioning, right? And this is just extending policies, like I said earlier, to our firewalls, to our wireless devices, our APs, and of course to our Forti Wi-Fi devices. In the future, and part of the roadmap is to include our switches as well, right? Feel this would be a huge, engagement for us to also have the ability to, extend those configs, like, or import configs from your switches, or deploy your switches from the cloud as well. So that's part of, the roadmap for FortiCloud, the ability for you to also manage switches, from your cloud account. But at the moment right now, primarily, you can manage your FortiGate devices or your FortiAPs, and you can provision them as well within your cloud account. So provisioning. So with, you purchase all these Fortinet devices, say, 5, 6 devices, and of course you have to deal with the headache of, configuring each individual device. Now, where FortiCloud comes in handy, like I mentioned, is the ability for you to register those devices in the cloud, and as well do, a mass deployment, a zero-touch deployment, via FortiDeploy. You can easily stand up, your APs. You can easily, stand up your FortiGate devices remotely without you being physically there, to do the basic configs, or to even push out, configs to those devices. So with FortiDeploy, this allows you, using a provisioning key, to push out, or to do a zero-touch deployment of Fortinet devices, primarily the FortiGates and the FortiAPs. So think about a scenario where you purchase, for distributed network, you purchase like 10 FortiGates, right? And you don't have the leverage to be at each individual site at the same time to configure the sites, right? You don't have the leverage to pretty much ensure that all those sites have the same security configs, and you don't have the leverage to ensure that that process is all seamless, right? And goes smoothly. This is where FortiDeploy comes in handy, right? So, like I said, it's a one-touch, deployment. All you just have to do is plug in, the FortiGate or the AP, into an interface that has or that pushes out the DHCP address to the device, and our Fortinet device will call back home, to FortiCloud, and pretty much inherit, the configs that you already have within your FortiManager, right? You can manage those devices remotely. You can monitor those devices remotely without you being there physically. So I do see a question here. Let's see. Let me see if I can. Oh, some people say they can't hear my voice clearly. How about now? Can you hear my voice, Avani?
Yeah, we can hear your voice clearly. It's just that I think someone has been saying that there is a banging sound or like pounding sound that is kind of distracting, but not sure if I hear it.
Yeah, I can't hear any banging sound. All right, so I'm going to keep the mic closer here. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Okay. So, yeah, so the whole idea with, with FortiDeploy, like I said, is the ability for you to, via one-touch deployment, push out, configs, initial configs, from FortiCloud to several assets that you have, spread across different locations, right? So you're talking about, web filtering configs, you're talking about IPS configs, you're talking about, policy packages, right? For traffic egress in those, devices. Yeah, for the deploy, you have the ability to push out those, initial configurations and policy packages into different installation targets. And those installation targets could be, your FortiGates, it could be your FortiAPs, and this makes this very, seamless in terms of, standing up Fortinet devices. Removes the need for you to be at each individual location to administer your Fortinet devices. Rather, you can remotely push out those packages and have the device stood up within minutes or even less. I think I'm having some. Okay, so I kind of like touched on the provisioning aspect of FortiCloud. Like I mentioned earlier, just imagine a situation where you have multiple remote offices and you want to push out policy packages. As an admin, you have that flexibility, you have that latitude, and even think of an environment where you happen to add more devices and you want to ensure that your security posture across the board is seamless. You can easily create packages, policy packages within your FortiManager, sync up your FortiManager with your FortiCloud account, and push out those packages to the different, FortiGate devices that exist at different branch offices or retail stores. We've used this several times for, large deployment in, retail store environment and, large school environments. We've also used this at market squares here in the Bay Area, and we've gotten very good reviews, in terms of the traction and the ease of use. Not only that, but the visibility as well that you get. So for the deploy, from more of a price point, it's a SKU item. You would purchase, it comes with a PO, right? So if you purchase, 7 devices, you just purchase a fully deployed one-time SKU, and with that SKU, you can provision all those devices included in the PO itself, right? And all that it entails, like I said, is pretty much enlisting, the IP address of your Forti manager and specifying the different serial numbers for the devices or targets, installation targets that you want to push out certain policy packages to. And with a bulk key, you can push out those packages by specifying the IP address of your Forti manager, where FortiCloud can pull the configs from and push those configs out to um, be it your FortiGate devices or be it your access points, wherever they are, scattered within your infrastructure. So this is pretty much a visual that shows you kind of like a highlight of when the device is deployed, showing you that the device has been deployed by FortiCloud. In terms of you've deployed the FortiGate devices, you deploy the APs. Hence comes the question of management, right? How do you manage those devices that you have in the cloud? How do you ensure that the policies you have is consistent across all the devices registered to your cloud account, right? How do you ensure that the security profiles for certain locations that you want consistent or certain locations you want different from others, stays the same. Even if your policy should change in the future, how do you address those questions, with your FortiCloud account? Now, within FortiCloud, like I mentioned, you have the ability, and it's still in beta stage, but the whole idea in the future is to push out configs, create templates within FortiCloud. And within those templates, you can create things like objects, you can create things like security profiles, push out those profiles to different assets that you have, FortiGate assets that you have, right? You can create, certain configs for your access points, push out those access point, details to um, your FortiGate devices or to your Forti APs. If your FortiGate is acting as a switch controller, you can push out, certain configs from FortiCloud to those FortiGate devices. What if you want to do a backup? Or if you want to schedule a backup, you can write scripts, for that purpose. Or if you want to upgrade your firmware, you have the ability to do that within FortiCloud itself. So this is just a visual, highlighting those pointers. I mean, not only can you extend those, management to FortiGates, but within Forti APs as well, you can register, X amount of APs to the cloud, right? And you can manage those APs from the cloud. You can provision SSIDs. You can tie this to, different authentication schemas that you have within your environment. There's actually a map that shows you specifically where you have that, access point deployed. If you have a distributed, network where you have several global, locations or several, say local, uh, places where you have the APs deployed, you have that visibility, from a map standpoint or from a visual standpoint where those APs are located, right? And you can actually make certain changes to those APs from the cloud itself. And hence comes the visibility that you also get, in terms of what APs you have registered, how much throughput is traversing that AP itself, right? How many clients do you have registered, to that AP, right? What kind of radius do you have configured for that AP, right? What are the channels configured, for that access point itself? So you have that visibility, from a single pane of glass, right? So in an instance where you have multiple APs hooked up to FortiCloud, you have that visibility. And not only that, you can even create a template, like an SSD template or an AP profile that you can push out to different APs that you configure within your infrastructure. So if you have a need for a new AP, You can deploy that AP and push out configs from the cloud, to that AP wherever they are located. You don't have to think about being there remotely, to push out or to configure that AP, or to pretty much understand how to set up that infrastructure. All you need is an egress point where you can get a DHCP IP address, and you can do the remaining configurations for the AP. And like I mentioned, you can deploy the AP as a transparent bridge. You can deploy the AP in as a layer 3 device where it handles most of your routing within your infrastructure. And even more so, you can apply security inspection as well, right? You're talking about antivirus, you're talking about intrusion prevention, you're talking about, blocking access to, Fortinet or control and command servers, all within a single pane of glass. You can create, those profiles, right? And extend those profiles to different, access points that you have there. Even at the application layer, you can apply policies, for different signatures, right? For example, you can apply policies blocking people going out to P2P, applications, or blocking them access to proxies, for example, right? These are some of the flexibility, aspect of FortiCloud that comes in handy. That not only can you apply, Wi-Fi network, access via the cloud, but you can also extend security. Not just security in terms of like access control, but security in terms of application security, in terms of antivirus security, in terms of web, web filtering, security. Um, and one other good aspect of FortiCloud is, like I mentioned, the visibility you get, the login aspect of it, right? You can snoop into the logs to understand what's going on in real time. You can go out, you can go into the historical logs as well, to see what's going on. You can also create reports as well, right? Reports surrounding things like PCI compliance, right? You can create, reports surrounding things like web activity, application activity. If you an organization that want to stay within, audit or compliance, we also address those questions as well. We give you the ability to create reports, and we give you, that visibility that you get as far back as 1 year of log retention. Um, so I kind of like spoke about management earlier on. I talked about the fact that you can, manage your assets, right? FortiGate devices, you can push out, policy packages. You can config changes, right, to different installation targets. I would say like FortiGates. Um, what if you have an infrastructure where you have multiple FortiCloud accounts, right? You also have a multi-tenant um, form factor for FortiCloud, whereby you can push out, or whereby you can manage multiple FortiCloud accounts, for different customers, and you can create, privileges for them to access their FortiCloud account to pull up reports, right? So say you have, customers and you're managing their FortiCloud account for them. You can add those FortiCloud accounts as sub accounts, and you have visibility, into those customers' environment. And if they need help with running reports, if they need help with looking at certain logs, you have the ability to pull up those information and send those information via email from FortiCloud to the customer, right? So this is more like for MSSPs, people who primarily in the manage service provider business. This provides you with the ability to manage several FortiCloud accounts from a single pane of glass, and if need be, you can provide certain privileges to customers to access their FortiCloud account if they need that access. The next segment I'm going to go over is the network visibility aspect of FortiCloud, and of course the sandbox aspect of FortiCloud, which is very important. This slide right here just describes, the dashboard for FortiCloud. The first thing you want to see as a system admin when you log into FortiCloud is, a brief history in terms of how traffic is traversing your network, in terms of where people are going, what applications are, existing within your infrastructure. Within FortiCloud, you have that visibility. You have that visibility in real time. You have the ability as well to look into historical logs. We call them the FortiView logs, and you can filter based off of user. You can filter by, destination. You can filter by, a specific, um, uh, you can filter by a specific application or even a specific destination if you choose to. The next slide I have here kind of like shows you a detailed view into the visibility that we get. And all we're just ingesting is the log, that you're sending to FortiCloud. Every other information, we don't, interfere with that, right? Any other, information that is not encapsulated in the logs itself, we don't interfere with that transaction. All we're doing is snipping into the logs and aggregating the logs from a central repository, like I said. So primarily, this is a slide that shows you how detailed we can get into looking into metadata, right? So looking into the timestamp for a specific transaction to Facebook, what action was applied from the FortiGate device itself that is inspecting that traffic, right? The source IP address, the destination IP address, very granular information that would help you, for network, log analysis or for even security analysis, right? And we also break it down into, threat management as well. So if there's an incident within your infrastructure, you can snoop into the logs by source user, to determine who that bad actor is, right? And if you choose to, you can also quarantine that device, or you can, pretty much go ahead and do the necessary investigation to, clean up that device that has been a bad actor within your environment. This is another view that shows you, in terms of like system events, right? So if there's some sort of like a system event or threat event within your infrastructure, right? You have the ability to, to snoop into the logs, to look into metadata, to see what action was applied to that specific instance, to also determine what device, right, or even the port, that transaction occurred. So, and even going deeper into what specific URL, right, or even the application that user was visiting when the event occurred itself. Right. So we have detailed visibility into threat events, into system events, into traffic events. Right. So that is pretty much the hallmark of our FortiCloud, giving you that broad coverage, right, into several system activities that are core, network activities that are core, threat activities that are core within your infrastructure. And coupled with the visibility that you get is our enhanced threat detection framework known as FortiSandbox Cloud. So what this provides for is the ability to protect against blind spots that exist within your infrastructure. So you're talking about things like zero-day threats, right? Unknown threats or exploits that, for example, we haven't you know um, created a definition for, right? So how does this incorporate into our whole infrastructure? Within FortiGate devices, you have the ability to send files to the cloud for inspection. It's a very simple configuration within your firewall itself. So when the files are sent to the cloud, we have the ability to detonate those files, spin up those files in a virtual environment, look into the payload of the file itself to see if it's doing something malicious within your infrastructure. And if that is the case, we tear down that transaction itself and alert you to that behavior so that you can take the necessary step to remediate that threat vector or that bad actor within your environment. So how it integrates within your firewall, you have the ability to simple config. You have the ability to push files to your cloud account. You specify your cloud account, and within any transaction, any file transaction that traverses your environment, we have the ability to ingest that information, apply the necessary inspection, run it through our FortiGuard AV tool, run it through our extended database tool. If we don't pick up any, malware markers for that transaction, we do an extended, code emulation on the file itself. Try to see if it's exfiltrating data from your environment. Try to see if it's pretty much migrating resources or making changes, registry changes within your environment. If it's doing something out of the ordinary, then we take necessary steps to address that behavior and alert you to that behavior as well. So this is just a visual of what the cloud sandbox looks like. So it conducts, a forensic analysis, file analysis into several, transactions that occur within your environment for different protocols, be it HTTP, HTTPS. If it's encrypted, we have the ability to, do SSL decryption on our devices and look into encrypted payloads, right? And ensure that it doesn't contain any, malformed, payload, right? And if that is the case, like I said, we tear down that, transaction. Uh, Even if it's SMTP, even if it's FTP, the FortiCloud sandbox also ties in with our FortiMail device, whereby, from the FortiMail cloud, you can push, you can pretty much send files to the FortiCloud um, for analysis and, wait for a verdict to come back, before the email is pushed out to the user. So, like I said, it does a forensic analysis, for a specific file, and comes back with a verdict. So we can look into several URLs if it's a URL download, to the specific extension for the file itself, and for whatever service it is, if it's SMTP, if it's HTTP, FTP, whatever the case is, we identify the source and of course the destination IP address where that transaction is going to. And if we see anything out of the ordinary, we block that transaction and as well alert you to that behavior itself. Lastly, with FortiCloud, we've also included a service called FortiCloud Indicator of Compromise. And what this primarily, provides for is the ability to, detect or find devices within your network that pretty much has been compromised. And it helps you quickly recover from incidences where a breach occurred, or if, for example, there are potentially unwanted programs within your infrastructure. What FortiCloud IOC provides for, is the ability to, do a forensic, analysis into your UTM logs, look into different, activities that occurs within your network, right? And identify, bad actors and, aggregate that information in a format that is more understandable and more, easily identifiable, for you to, apply certain, remediation steps to, address those behaviors within your infrastructure. So just giving you a visual of what it looks like. So like I mentioned, it gives you a threat view of your network, shows you devices that, potentially have been compromised. If, for example, a device is communicating with a botnet IP address or some sort of like, malware, IP address, we have that visibility, right? And we tell you, or we present that information in a granular format, right? Telling you the destination IP address, telling you the destination country, right? And telling you, the steps that you can take to remediate, that event itself, right? You also have the ability to quarantine that device. You also have the ability to run a FortiClient to clean up that endpoint device itself. right, within your infrastructure. And this is just a, a detailed view um, of the log. Um, so you have the ability to drill down to get more detailed, information um, about that transaction itself, or you can see, what device picked up that event, right? What sort of actions that you have configured within that FortiGate device itself, right? Source and destination information, the port number, very granular information that you need, for log analysis within your infrastructure. Also, to supplement with that, we can tie in with other threat feeds like virus total, right? So if, for example, you're thinking it's a false positive, you have the ability to click on virus total just to for good measure ensure that we're doing our job, right? And kind of like do your own due diligence to ensure that okay, that we're not picking up any sort of like false positives, right? So um, in a nutshell, our solution primarily with FortiCloud gives you the ability to, converge both security, networking, and, the importance of visibility and of course log analysis from one single pane of glass. You can apply network security at the access layer for people connecting via Wi-Fi. In the future, we're also looking at integrating this with our switches, right? At the network layer, you can apply security to your access, to your firewall devices, right? And at the application layer, you can apply application visibility, to several applications that traverses your network. Now you can actually have a readable log, and aggregate this information for auditing purposes, right? For compliance purposes. That way, you stay within a very solid, security posture. So I think that wraps it up from my own end here. Aben?
Okay, so if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box or the chat box, and Amika will be more than happy to answer those for you. Meanwhile, let me take the control back. We're just going to wait for a couple minutes to see if there are any questions. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of things before the raffle drawing. Okay, thank you, Emeka, first of all, for taking the time out to present and support FineTech with the webinar series. So first being the Fortinet's PAN competitive takeout program. So as you guys, many of you know that Palo Alto Networks has EOL'd many hardware models, making now the perfect time to engage with customers and prospects to replace their Palo Alto equipment with Fortinet hardware. So to help you take advantage of this opportunity, Fortinet created a special pricing offer as well as a discount on professional services and developed sales enablement and demand gen materials, all designed to incentivize your customers to make the switch. The offer is that the PAN competitive takeout program includes an opportunity for resellers to take advantage of increased discount on hardware and software bundles, as well as a discount on professional services with a minimum order of $50,000 in product net to Fortinet, which again does not include the professional services. So if you guys are interested in learning more, you can also visit our website. And you'll have access to the entire, details and information on the same. Also, I'd like to show you our partner portal. So for those who are not registered with us on our partner portal, it takes a couple minutes and you will have access to our previous webinar recordings, which includes the presentation as well as the webcast recordings, the partner promotions, Fortinet talking points, and additional resources like our territory map. So if you have any further questions, you can also contact your regional sales rep and they will be happy to answer those for you. Now it's Raffle Choi. So I've already added everyone's name on here and I'm going to do a final drawing for 2 people to win a $25 Amazon gift card. Oh. Okay, congratulations, Nicole and Regina Ross. I will email you later with your e-code for the $25 Amazon gift card. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Emeka, again, for taking your time out to present and educate our partners. And now we will see you on May 17th again with Fortinet. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.